Welcome back. Tonight, we're drifting slowly into the complete lore of the missing children incident from Five Nights at Freddy's. The pivotal tragedy that shattered the innocence of a family pizzeria, born from one man's twisted obsession with remnant and immortality. Established in the early 1980s beneath the cheerful facade of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it unfolded on a date often theorized as June 26, 1985, through contextual clues and secondary sources, though primary games leave the timing unmarked. When William Afton, disguised in the Spring Bonnie suit, lured 5 children to their ends in hidden back rooms. Intended, perhaps, as experiments in soul binding, it instead sparked a chain of possessions where the victims' essences fused with the animatronics through the puppet's ritual, turning beloved performers into vessels of unrest that wandered nights in pursuit of their killer. Records conflict slightly on timeline details, like whether Charlotte Emily's prior murder directly preceded, though primary sources from the games place her as the first, awakening the puppet to grant life to the others. From the partnership of Henry, Emily, and William Afton that built the venue, to the lures and concealments that claimed Susie, Fritz, Gabriel, Jeremy, and Cassidy, to the investigations that closed the doors and the hauntings that echoed through later locations, we'll trace every step of this shadowed event. This is the story of how a quest for eternal life became a cycle of spectral vengeance, and how one deceiver's actions ignited possessions that still resonate in the ruins of forgotten pizzerias. Whether you're uncovering these details for the first time, letting familiar echoes pull you deeper into rest, or simply allowing the tale to wash over you like a gentle fog as sleep takes hold, this will carry you through the full, unbroken history of the missing children incident. Before we begin, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy this kind of slow, immersive storytelling that unfolds like a dream. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a quiet wonder to see the same story weaving through different corners of the world, one hushed night at a time. Let's begin. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza emerged as a modest restaurant chain in the early 1980s, where families gathered for meals and entertainment centered on animatronic performers, their mechanical movements synchronized to cheerful music that filled dining halls with programmed joy. Founders Henry, Emily, and William Afton designed the space around a main stage flanked by arcade games and dining areas to draw in children with lively shows, creating an environment where the scent of fresh pizza dough mingled with the electronic beeps of arcade cabinets and the synthetic melodies of the band. The pizzeria's layout encouraged parents to relax in vinyl booths while kids watched the band play familiar tunes, fostering repeat visits that built its local popularity through birthday parties and weekend gatherings. This setup worked because the animatronics moved in sync with pre-recorded music, creating an illusion of live interaction that captivated young imaginations, their servos whirring beneath fur and fabric as hydraulic limbs gestured in time with vocals. As word spread through community events and birthday bookings, the location solidified its role as a staple for celebrations, laying the groundwork for deeper connections between visitors and the mechanical performers, where children pressed their faces against safety barriers to watch the band up close. The checkered tile floors reflected stage lights in patterns that danced across the dining area, while overhead fixtures cast a warm glow that made the space feel inviting, even as afternoon sun filtered through front windows. Parents sipped sodas and watched their children's faces light up during shows, unaware of the engineering marvels operating behind those synthetic grins, where circuit boards processed commands and pneumatic systems hissed softly beneath the music's cover. On the central stage stood the core animatronics, each one a carefully crafted performer, designed to evoke specific emotions and fulfill distinct roles in the band's dynamic. Freddy Fazbear, The bear leader, with his black top hat and crimson bow tie, gripped a microphone stand with mechanical paws that moved in programmed arcs, his voice box producing deep, resonant tones that anchored the band's sound. Children cheered when Freddy's jaw opened wide during songs, his eyes illuminated from within by small bulbs that gave him an expression of perpetual friendliness. A design choice that Henry Emily had refined over countless iterations in his workshop. Bonnie the Bunny stood to Freddy's left, his purple fur slightly worn from regular maintenance cycles, clutching a red electric guitar that he strummed with rhythmic precision, his green bow tie bouncing slightly with each programmed movement. The guitar, though not truly functional in producing sound, moved in sync with pre-recorded tracks, creating the illusion that Bonnie was genuinely playing the instrument. His long ears twitching, occasionally, through servo adjustments that added personality to his performance. Chica the chicken rounded out the trio on Freddy's right, her yellow feathers bright under stage lights, wearing a bib that read, "Let's Eat," in bold letters, a marketing touch that subtly encouraged families to order more pizza during shows. She held a cupcake prop named Mr. Cupcake, waving it during food-themed songs, her movements slightly more exaggerated than the others, to draw attention from younger children who often pointed and laughed at her enthusiastic gestures. These figures, engineered with hydraulic limbs and facial servos, executed routines programmed by Henry Emily to mimic a rock band, complete with synchronized head nods and arm gestures that created a sense of choreographed unity on stage. Children pressed close to the safety barriers, their small hands gripping the metal rails as they cheered and clapped along to the rhythms, which in turn drew families back repeatedly and kept the shows running smoothly night after night without interruption. The precision of their movements stemmed from Afton's refinements to the endoskeletons, ensuring reliability that prevented early breakdowns and sustained the pizzeria's draw, as even minor malfunctions could shatter the illusion and disappoint audiences who expected seamless performances. Each animatronic stood roughly 6 to 7 feet tall, their imposing size offset by friendly features and bright colors that made them approachable rather than intimidating, a careful balance that Henry had achieved through studying children's reactions during test shows at early locations. The endoskeletons beneath the costumes consisted of metal frames with joints at every major articulation point, allowing for fluid movement that seemed almost lifelike when viewed from the audience, though up close, one could hear the faint grinding of gears and the soft hiss of pneumatic systems adjusting pressure. Wiring ran through hollow limbs, connecting to control boxes backstage where technicians monitored performance metrics and adjusted programming between shows, ensuring each routine played out exactly as intended without deviation or error. Off to the side, curtained within Pirate Cove, Foxy the Pirate Fox waited for his cue, his rust-colored fur and tattered costume giving him a weathered appearance that contrasted sharply with the polished look of the main band. Emerging with a hook hand replacing his right paw, an eye patch over one eye, and torn brown trousers, Foxy delivered swashbuckling tales between main sets, his voice synthesizer producing pirate-accented lines that delighted adventurous children. His isolated alcove preserved mystery, as starry curtains built anticipation, until floodlights revealed him, dashing across the stage with jerky, exaggerated movements that mimicked a pirate's swagger. This separation from the main band fostered variety, pulling adventurous children toward the cove for closer peeks, which dispersed crowds evenly and maximized floor space usage during peak hours when the dining area filled to capacity. The curtain mechanism operated on a simple pulley system, opening slowly to dramatic music that signaled Foxy's imminent appearance, a theatrical touch that Henry had insisted upon to give each character their moment in the spotlight. Children often gathered specifically for Foxy's performances, his unpredictable timing and energetic routines, making him a favorite among those who tired of the main band's more structured shows, creating a loyal subset of fans who requested Pirate Cove appearances at birthday parties. Together, These core animatronics formed the pizzeria's magnetic core. Their combined routines, weaving music, stories, and interactivity into evenings that lingered in family memories long after the last slice of pizza had been consumed. The shows typically ran in 30-minute cycles, with 15-minute intermissions, where the animatronics returned to neutral poses, while staff cleaned tables and reset the dining area for the next wave of guests. During these breaks, the animatronics stood motionless on stage, their eyes dimmed and limbs locked in resting positions, creating an eerie stillness that contrasted with their lively performances, though most patrons paid little attention during these transitions as they focused on food and conversation. The stage itself measured roughly 20 feet wide and 10 feet deep, elevated 3 feet above the dining floor to ensure visibility from all angles, with speakers embedded in the walls that produced surprisingly robust sound for a family establishment. Lighting rigs hung from the ceiling, controlled by the same system that managed the animatronics, allowing for coordinated effects during key moments in songs when spotlights would sweep across the band, or strobe effects would punctuate musical climaxes. Parents often commented on the professionalism of the shows, comparing them favorably to theme park attractions, despite Freddy Fazbear's Pizza being a modest local chain, a testament to the engineering prowess that Henry Emily had poured into every aspect of the venue's design. The dining area sprawled outward from the stage in a semicircular configuration, with booth seating along the walls and tables scattered throughout the open space to accommodate groups of varying sizes. Checkered tiles in black and white created a classic diner aesthetic, though wear patterns near high-traffic areas showed where countless children had run between tables during parties, their excitement barely contained by parental supervision. The prize corner stood near the entrance, displaying an array of small toys and trinkets that children could earn through arcade games, creating an additional draw beyond the shows and food. Arcade cabinets lined one wall, their screens glowing with colorful pixel art depicting mazes, space battles, and simple platforming challenges, each one emitting a unique combination of electronic sounds that blended into a cacophony of digital noise during busy hours. The machines accepted tokens purchased at the front counter, a system that encouraged families to spend beyond their initial pizza order, as children inevitably begged for just a few more tokens to try for high scores or win tickets redeemable for prizes. These economic considerations, woven seamlessly into the entertainment experience, demonstrated the careful planning that went into making Freddy Fazbear's Pizza profitable while maintaining its family-friendly atmosphere. Behind the scenes, the pizzeria's infrastructure revealed the complexity hidden beneath its cheerful surface, where maintenance rooms held spare parts and technical equipment necessary for keeping the animatronics operational. A back hallway connected these service areas to the main floor, its walls lined with employee notices and safety reminders, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead in the windowless space. Storage rooms contained boxes of supplies, from paper plates and napkins to cleaning chemicals and extra costumes for the animatronics, stacked on metal shelving units that reached nearly to the ceiling. The kitchen occupied a separate area, its ovens running constantly during operating hours to keep up with pizza orders, the heat and noise isolated from dining patrons by heavy doors that swung both ways. Staff break rooms provided minimal comfort, with a small table, a few chairs, and a refrigerator for employee lunches. The walls painted in neutral tones that had yellowed slightly over years of use. These unsexy spaces, necessary for operations but hidden from public view, would later play crucial roles in the events that would transform Freddy Fazbear's Pizza from a beloved family destination into a site of unspeakable tragedy, their isolation and lack of supervision creating opportunities that William Afton would exploit with calculated precision. Henry, Emily, and William Afton formed the backbone of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza through a shared vision that blended engineering prowess with operational savvy, their partnership beginning in the late 1970s when both men recognized the potential for animatronic entertainment in family dining. Henry, a dedicated inventor with a background in robotics and mechanical engineering, poured his efforts into crafting the animatronics from the ground up, sketching blueprints in his workshop late into the night to ensure every joint and circuit supported reliable performance and whimsical appeal. His designs featured the core endoskeletons and basic programming that enabled movements during shows, which directly entertained young audiences and built the venue's draw among families seeking affordable weekend activities. The workshop where Henry labored sat adjacent to his home, a garage-turned-laboratory filled with drafting tables, soldering equipment, and prototype limbs that hung from hooks on the walls like mechanical sculptures. He approached animatronic design with artistic sensibility, considering not just functionality but emotional resonance, ensuring that each character's movements conveyed personality through subtle programming choices that made Freddy seem confident, Bonnie energetic, Chica playful, and Foxy adventurous. These nuances, invisible to untrained eyes, elevated the performances beyond simple mechanical repetition, creating characters that children could bond with and remember long after leaving the pizzeria. Afton's input complemented this by contributing to technical refinements, from adjusting parts in the suits to handling aspects that kept the pizzeria operational without major issues during its early years of rapid growth. Where Henry focused on creativity and innovation, Afton excelled at practical implementation and cost management, identifying ways to streamline production and reduce maintenance overhead without sacrificing performance quality. Together, their collaboration caused the restaurant to flourish. As Henry's creative focus paired with Afton's operational efficiency drew families back repeatedly, establishing a foundation that seemed unbreakable in those early days when success followed success and expansion felt inevitable. The division of labor worked naturally, with Henry spending most of his time in technical development, while Afton managed daily operations, handled supplier relationships, and oversaw the small staff of teenagers and young adults who served food and maintained cleanliness. This arrangement allowed both men to focus on their strengths, creating a synergy that maximized the pizzeria's potential during its formative years, when positive word of mouth could make or break a new entertainment venue in a competitive market. As the partnership deepened, subtle differences in their philosophies began to surface amid the daily grind of running the establishment. Small fractures that would only become significant in retrospect. Henry emphasized ethical innovations, like integrating security features into the puppet animatronic to monitor wandering children, ensuring the space remained a haven rather than just a venue for profit-driven entertainment. This approach stemmed from his role as a father to Charlotte Emily, leading to designs that fostered genuine joy and protection, which in turn elevated the pizzeria's reputation among local communities as a safe place where parents could relax without constant vigilance. The puppet, housed in a striped gift box near the prize corner, represented Henry's most sophisticated security design, programmed to emerge and patrol when children strayed too far from adult supervision. Its sensors detecting wristbands worn by young guests during parties. The system worked through simple proximity tracking, with the puppet's programming directing it to approach children who ventured toward exits or restricted areas, playing a gentle music box melody that caught their attention and guided them back toward the main floor. This feature, though rarely needed in practice, provided peace of mind to parents and demonstrated Henry's commitment to responsible business practices that prioritized child welfare above all other considerations. Afton, meanwhile, delved into more experimental mechanics, refining the spring lock systems in suits like Spring Bonnie to allow seamless transitions between robotic and human operation, a tweak that expanded performance options but introduced hidden complexities that troubled Henry. These suits represented a significant innovation in animatronic design, using spring-loaded mechanisms to retract the endoskeleton components against the inner walls of the costume, creating space for a human performer to step inside and control movements manually during walkabouts and special events. The spring locks function through a series of cranks and latches that, when properly set, held the metal framework safely compressed, allowing the wearer to move freely without interference from the animatronic components. This dual functionality meant that Spring Bonnie could perform on stage autonomously or be worn by staff for more intimate guest interactions, a flexibility that proved valuable during peak hours when the main animatronics were occupied with scheduled shows. However, the system carried inherent risks, as the spring locks could fail under certain conditions, such as exposure to moisture or sudden impacts, causing the compressed endoskeleton to snap back into place with lethal force. Training materials emphasized extreme caution when operating these suits, warning staff to avoid rapid movements and to ensure proper cranking before entering. Yet the convenience they offered often overshadowed these safety concerns in the rush of daily operations. These contrasts, though not immediately disruptive, sowed seeds of divergence, as Afton's technical tweaks enabled greater flexibility in shows, yet occasionally clashed with Henry's insistence on simplicity and reliability, creating tension that simmered beneath their professional courtesy. Henry worried that the spring-lock suits represented unnecessary danger for marginal benefit, arguing that the main animatronics provided sufficient entertainment without requiring staff to risk injury in wearable versions. Afton countered that the suits allowed for personalized interactions that autonomous animatronics couldn't match, enabling performers to respond to children's questions and participate in impromptu activities that strengthened customer loyalty. These debates occurred behind closed doors, usually in the small office they shared near the kitchen, their voices occasionally rising above normal conversation levels before one or both would concede partial points and agree to table the discussion. Despite these disagreements, both men recognized that their partnership had built something valuable, a successful business that brought joy to countless families, while providing comfortable incomes for themselves and employment for dozens of local teenagers, making dissolution unthinkable, even as philosophical differences deepened. Over time, their joint endeavors solidified Freddy Fazbear's Pizza as a landmark of animated entertainment, where the animatronics' seamless routines owed much to the duo's balanced input and complementary skills. Henry's engineering ensured the band's performances ran like clockwork, with synchronized audio tracks and movements that delighted crowds, directly contributing to packed dining halls and growing popularity in local circles that saw the pizzeria featured in newspaper entertainment sections and community event calendars. Afton's operational oversight handled the logistics, from inventory logs of pizza supplies to employee rotations that kept the suits in use without wear, maintaining the illusion of endless fun that made Freddy Fazbear's Pizza a reliable choice for birthday parties and family outings. The business model they developed proved remarkably successful, combining affordable food with free entertainment that kept families on-site longer and encouraged additional spending on arcade games and merchandise. Revenue streams multiplied through party packages that included reserved seating, personal appearances by animatronics, and customized birthday announcements during shows, creating premium options that upsold basic visits into memorable experiences. Despite emerging tensions, Henry's caution against overcomplicating the technology versus Afton's push for advancements, the partnership sustained the location's early success, creating a legacy of innovation that would echo through later tragedies as their creations took on lives far beyond the intended scripts. The pizzeria expanded during this period, adding second and third locations in nearby towns that followed the same template, each one featuring the core 4 animatronics and operating under franchise agreements that brought the Freddy Fazbear brand to new markets. This growth brought increased demands on both men, with Henry spending more time troubleshooting issues at distant locations and Afton juggling multiple operational concerns across the chain. The success also attracted attention from investors interested in further expansion, leading to meetings about potential corporate partnerships that could scale Freddy Fazbear's Pizza into a national chain competing with established restaurant entertainment venues. Yet beneath this prosperity, subtle warning signs emerged for those paying attention, as Afton began spending more time alone in maintenance areas, conducting private experiments that he described vaguely as technical improvements when Henry inquired, responses that satisfied curiosity without revealing the darker obsessions taking root in his mind. At the heart of every performance in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza stood Freddy Fazbear himself, the animatronic bear who anchored the band as its lead singer and frontman, his presence commanding the stage through sheer visual dominance and programmed charisma. Positioned center stage under spotlights that highlighted his brown fur, black top hat, and crimson bow tie, Freddy gripped a microphone stand while his hydraulic jaws opened for deep, resonant songs programmed into his voice box, each syllable processed through speakers that gave his vocals a warm, slightly synthesized quality that children found endearing rather than artificial. This setup drew children forward during shows, as his rhythmic head tilts and paw waves synchronized with backing tracks, creating a focal point that held attention spans through entire sets without distraction. The engineering behind Freddy's movements, servos calibrated for smooth repetition hour after hour, ensured reliability that sustained the pizzeria's schedule of back-to-back performances during busy weekends, preventing downtime that could scatter crowds and reduce revenue. His presence commanded the room in ways that transcended his mechanical nature, turning casual diners into rapt audiences who clapped along, reinforcing the venue's appeal as a place of structured fun where families could reliably expect quality entertainment. Freddy's design incorporated psychological considerations that Henry Emily had researched extensively before finalizing the character's appearance and behavior patterns. The top hat and bow tie evoked classic showmanship, connecting the animatronic to a tradition of performers that audiences instinctively trusted and respected, while the bear form itself suggested approachability and strength in equal measure. His brown coloring, neither too dark nor too bright, allowed him to stand out on stage without overwhelming the visual composition when viewed alongside Bonnie's purple and Chica's yellow. The microphone stand served both practical and aesthetic purposes, giving Freddy's hands something to grip during performances while reinforcing his role as the band's vocalist, a visual cue that even young children could understand without explanation. His eyes, constructed from plastic hemispheres with internal lighting, tracked slightly during certain movements through a simple mechanism that swiveled the orbs in their sockets, creating the impression of awareness that made his gaze seem to follow audience members in the front rows. This effect, achieved through careful programming rather than true tracking, nonetheless enhanced the illusion of personality, making children feel personally acknowledged during shows when Freddy's eyes swept across their section of the dining area. The voice box that produced Freddy's vocals represented some of Henry's finest work, utilizing recorded samples from a professional voice actor who had performed all the band's songs during a single marathon recording session in a small studio. The actor had been instructed to adopt a friendly, slightly gravelly tone that conveyed warmth without seeming threatening, hitting notes in a comfortable baritone range that resonated well through the pizzeria's sound system. These recordings were then processed and compressed to fit the animatronic's limited memory banks, resulting in a slightly mechanical quality that became part of Freddy's distinctive character rather than a technical limitation. The voice box itself sat within Freddy's torso, connected to the jaw servo through synchronized timing that made lip movements align roughly with syllables, though careful observers could notice a slight delay that betrayed the pre-recorded nature of the performances. Between songs, Freddy delivered programmed banter, introducing the next number, or thanking the audience for their enthusiasm. Simple scripts that rotated through variations to prevent excessive repetition for regular visitors who might attend multiple parties or weekly visits. His endoskeleton, the metal framework that supported the costume and enabled all movement, consisted of lightweight aluminum alloys chosen for their strength-to-weight ratio, reducing the load on motors and extending their operational lifespan between maintenance cycles. The main torso housed the heaviest components, including the voice box, primary control board, and power distribution system that fed electricity to servos throughout the body. Arms connected through ball and socket joints at the shoulders, allowing for a wide range of motion that enabled Freddy to wave, point, or raise the microphone stand overhead during climactic moments in performances. His legs, while capable of weight-bearing, remained locked during shows as the animatronic stood on a fixed platform that could rotate slowly to give the impression of movement without requiring complex walking mechanisms that might fail under regular use. This stationary design represented a practical compromise, as truly ambulatory animatronics would have required significantly more complex engineering and introduced greater risk of malfunction, though Henry had sketched concepts for mobile versions in his personal notebooks, ideas that never progressed beyond theoretical planning. Flanking Freddy, Bonnie the Bunny strummed an oversized red guitar on stage left, his purple fur and green bow tie adding vibrant contrast as he leaned into riffs that built energy in the band's repertoire through exaggerated body language and enthusiastic strumming motions. Chica the Chicken rounded out the group on stage right, her yellow feathers and Let's Eat bib paired with a handheld cupcake prop that she waved during food-themed numbers, prompting cheers from kids eyeing their slices nearby. Her movements programmed to be slightly more animated than Freddy's to capture attention from younger audience members with shorter attention spans. These positions allowed for choreographed interplay, where Bonnie's guitar solos transitioned seamlessly into Chica's harmonies, a sequence rooted in Henry Emily's scripting that kept performances dynamic without overwhelming young viewers who might struggle to track multiple focal points simultaneously. The spatial arrangement on stage followed deliberate logic, with Freddy's central position establishing hierarchy, while Bonnie and Chica's flanking positions created visual balance and allowed for synchronized movements where all three would turn toward each other during specific musical moments, suggesting interaction and band chemistry that enhanced the performance's believability. Bonnie's guitar, though non-functional in terms of actual sound production, featured strings and frets that moved when his mechanical fingers pressed against them, creating visual authenticity that satisfied most viewers who didn't scrutinize the lack of cable connecting the instrument to any amplifier. The guitar itself was constructed from lightweight wood shaped and painted to resemble a classic electric model, its red finish, glossy under stage lights, and occasionally reflecting beams into the audience in brief flashes that punctuated energetic songs. Bonnie's posture during performances leaned forward slightly, giving the impression of intense focus on his playing, his long ears occasionally twitching through servo adjustments that added personality to his otherwise repetitive motions. The green bow tie at his throat bobbed with each strum, attached to his costume in a way that allowed it to move independently through the motion of his arms, a small detail that contributed to the overall impression of a living performer rather than a mechanical reproduction. His facial features, including prominent buck teeth and a wide grin, gave him a goofy charm that made him particularly popular with elementary-aged children who identified with his playful energy and less authoritative presence compared to Freddy's leadership role. Chica's cupcake prop, which the character held in her right hand throughout performances, became an iconic element of the show through sheer repetition and prominent placement in marketing materials that featured the animatronics. The cupcake, nicknamed Mr. Cupcake in official documentation, though rarely referred to by name during shows, featured pink frosting, a cherry on top, and a facial expression that somehow managed to be simultaneously cute and slightly unnerving when viewed up close. During food-themed songs, Chica would raise the cupcake overhead and wave it in circular patterns, the motion drawing children's eyes and often eliciting spontaneous laughter especially from younger attendees experiencing their first show. Her bib, emblazoned with "Let's Eat" in bold letters, served as subtle marketing that subliminally encouraged food purchases, though the effect was mild enough to avoid seeming manipulative, blending naturally into her character design as something a chicken-themed performer might logically wear. Chica's voice, programmed at a higher pitch than Freddy's baritone, added vocal variety to the band's sound, with her harmonies filling the upper register during chorus sections, where all three main animatronics sang together in programmed unity. The coordination between Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica during performances required precise timing, managed by a central control system that synchronized all three animatronics to the same audio track, ensuring that movements aligned with musical beats and lyrical phrases without drift over time. This system operated from a control room behind the stage, where a technician, usually a teenage employee with basic technical training, monitored performance metrics on a simple interface that displayed timing codes and error messages if any animatronic fell out of sync. The shows rarely experienced issues once properly calibrated, as Henry's engineering had built redundancy into the system through backup timing mechanisms that could maintain synchronization, even if the primary controller experienced minor failures. Between performances, the system would run diagnostic checks, subtle movements and light flashes invisible to audiences as the animatronics verified that all servos responded correctly and that audio playback remained aligned with programmed movements, an automated maintenance routine that minimized the need for manual intervention except during scheduled deep cleanings and repairs. In Pirate Cove, Foxy the Pirate Fox operated on a separate control system that allowed for more dramatic entrances and exits independent of the main band's schedule. His performances timed to fill gaps between main shows and provide variety for children who had already watched several rotations of Freddy's repertoire. The curtain that concealed Pirate Cove remained closed for most of each hour, building anticipation through mystery and creating a sense of event when it finally opened to reveal Foxy in mid-performance pose, his hook hand raised and eye patch glinting under spotlights that suddenly illuminated the alcove. The cove's theming extended beyond just Foxy himself, with painted backdrops depicting ocean scenes, a wooden deck platform that suggested a ship's prow, and hanging rigging that completed the pirate atmosphere, all of it carefully constructed to withstand years of operation without fading or deteriorating under constant stage lighting. Foxy's performances typically lasted 5 to 7 minutes, shorter than the main band's full shows but intense enough to maintain engagement, his pirate tales narrating simplified adventure stories about searching for treasure or battling sea monsters. Narratives designed to excite without frightening young children who might be sensitive to darker themes. The weathered appearance of Foxy's costume, including intentional tears in the fabric and rust-colored staining on his fur, represented a deliberate design choice rather than wear from use, giving him a character distinct from the polished appearance of the main band. This aesthetic suggested experience and adventure, making Foxy appealing to slightly older children who saw themselves as too mature for the babyish main show, but still young enough to enjoy animatronic entertainment. His movements, programmed to be more jerky and aggressive than the smooth motions of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica, matched his pirate persona with sudden lunges and sweeping arm gestures that made his performances more physically dynamic and visually exciting. The hook hand posed interesting engineering challenges, as its pointed shape required careful programming to ensure Foxy never gestured in ways that might accidentally damage his own costume or strike the cove's set pieces, limitations that Henry had addressed through restricted range of motion in that arm compared to Foxy's left hand, which could grip props and make more varied gestures. Together, these four animatronics created a comprehensive entertainment package that kept Freddy Fazbear's Pizza competitive in the family dining market, their combined performances offering enough variety to justify multiple visits, while maintaining consistent quality that built trust with parents seeking reliable entertainment options. The initial investment in their development had been substantial, with Henry spending thousands of hours on design and construction, while Afton secured the necessary funding through business loans and early investor partnerships. But the return proved worthwhile, as the pizzeria quickly established itself as the premier entertainment venue in its market area. Expansion plans, discussed frequently between Henry and Afton during the pizzeria's successful early years, centered on replicating this model in new locations, while potentially introducing additional characters or enhanced features that could differentiate later locations and create incentive for customers to visit multiple franchise sites. Yet these plans would remain perpetually on the horizon, never quite reaching implementation before darker events intervened to halt the pizzeria's growth and transform its legacy from one of innocent entertainment to something far more sinister, where the same animatronics that once brought joy would become associated with tragedy and loss in ways their creators never imagined during those optimistic early days of operation. William Afton balanced his role at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with family life, raising 3 children in a home that echoed the mechanical hum of his inventions. The basement, often filled with the soft whir of motors being tested, and the sharp smell of solder melting as he refined designs in his personal workspace. His eldest son, Michael Afton, navigated adolescence amid his father's long hours at the pizzeria, often stepping in to watch over siblings when William remained late at the restaurant or disappeared into his workshop for hours without emerging, creating a dynamic where Michael assumed quasi-parental responsibilities despite being barely a teenager himself. The household operated under routines dictated by William's unpredictable schedule, with meals sometimes delayed until evening when he finally surfaced from his work, his mind clearly still occupied with technical problems or business concerns that left him distracted during family interactions. Michael learned to interpret his father's moods, recognizing when William wanted silence versus when he might be willing to discuss his projects, developing a cautious approach to their relationship that mixed respect with wariness, understanding on some instinctive level that his father's work consumed him in ways that left little emotional energy for parenting beyond basic provision and occasional discipline. Daughter Elizabeth, drawn to the colorful world of the animatronics by her father's descriptions and occasional glimpses of prototype sketches left on kitchen tables, begged for visits to see his creations whenever family conversations turned to the pizzeria, her fascination sparked by tales of advanced designs like Circus Baby, a character William described as his most sophisticated creation, intended for a sister location that would showcase more interactive animatronics, grew into an obsession that worried William, even as it pleased him to see his work inspiring such enthusiasm. Elizabeth's room gradually filled with drawings she had made of the animatronics, childish renderings in crayon and marker that depicted Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy alongside imagined characters based on her father's vague descriptions of future projects, a gallery of mechanical performers that covered her walls and spoke to how completely the pizzeria had captured her imagination. She would ask endless questions about how the animatronics worked, whether they could think, whether they dreamed when powered down, queries that William sometimes answered with technical explanations and other times deflected with vague reassurances, depending on his mood and how closely her questions approached subjects he preferred to keep private. The youngest son, never named directly in the early lore, but often referred to as the crying child in later analyses, absorbed the family's routines quietly, his daily interactions laced with exposures to the restaurant's characters that blurred the line between play and reality in ways that fostered deep anxieties. Unlike Elizabeth's enthusiasm or Michael's detached tolerance, the youngest son developed genuine fear of the animatronics, their towering size and mechanical movements triggering distress that manifested in nightmares and daytime crying, fits that frustrated William, who saw his son's fear as irrational weakness rather than understandable childhood response to genuinely intimidating machines. This sensitivity created friction within the family, as William would insist on bringing all three children to the pizzeria, despite the youngest's protests, believing that exposure would cure the fear through familiarity, a theory that proved counterproductive as each visit only intensified the boy's terror. Michael, tasked with supervising his siblings during these outings, sometimes used his brother's fear against him through cruel pranks that involved animatronic masks and jump scares, behavior that William either didn't notice or chose to ignore in favor of focusing on operational matters at the pizzeria, where his attention remained fixed on technical details rather than family dynamics. This domestic setup stemmed from William's dual life, where professional ambitions seeped into home, causing subtle shifts in dynamics as his experiments grew more consuming, setting a foundation for personal entanglements with the pizzeria's fate that would only become clear in hindsight. The basement workshop became increasingly off-limits to the children, with William installing a lock on the door and instructing them never to enter without permission, rules enforced through stern warnings rather than explanations about what dangers might lurk among the mechanical components and chemical substances he stored there. The workshop contained drafting tables covered in blueprints, shelves lined with spare animatronic parts, and a workbench where William conducted experiments that extended beyond simple entertainment robotics into territories he discussed with no one. Not even Emily, whose technical expertise might have questioned the directions William's research had begun taking. Late-night sounds from the basement grinding metal, sudden electrical buzzes, and occasionally what sounded like frustrated exclamations became normal background noise in the Afton household. The family learning to sleep through disturbances that would have concerned neighbors had the house not been sufficiently isolated to muffle the sounds beyond property lines. Daily operations at the pizzeria pulled William away from family for hours that stretched into double shifts when technical issues arose or when he claimed to be conducting maintenance that required uninterrupted concentration. Yet his innovations there mirrored concerns at home, where early interests in remnant, a substance binding life essence to metal, began to shape his worldview and inform experiments he conducted in secret during periods when the restaurant closed for the night. He pursued designs in private sessions that occurred after employees had left and the dining area sat empty. The animatronics powered down in their neutral poses, while William worked in back rooms with equipment he had gradually assembled without Henry's knowledge or approval, a parallel research program that existed alongside his official duties as co-founder and technical specialist. These sessions sometimes involved modifications to the animatronics themselves, subtle adjustments to their endoskeletons, or additions of sensors and collection devices whose purposes he documented in coded notebooks that mixed legitimate maintenance logs with cryptic observations about energy retention and consciousness transfer, theories that would have seemed absurd to anyone else, but which William pursued with increasing conviction and obsessive focus. The concept of remnant, though poorly understood even by William during these early stages, fascinated him as a potential key to extending life beyond biological limits, a goal that consumed his thoughts and drove experimentation that grew progressively more unethical as he contemplated what might be required to truly test his theories. He had observed how animatronics could become more than simple programmed machines, how repeated exposure to human presence seemed to leave traces that affected their performance in ways his diagnostics couldn't fully explain, anomalies that most engineers would dismiss as sensor drift or programming glitches, but which William interpreted as evidence of something more profound occurring within the electronic systems and metal frameworks. His research into this phenomenon required isolating variables, documenting unusual behaviors, and eventually attempting to deliberately induce the conditions that seemed to produce these effects, a progression that moved from passive observation to active experimentation, without William fully acknowledging to himself where his work was leading, or what moral lines he was preparing to cross in service of his obsession with unlocking what he believed to be the secret of immortality encoded in the interaction between consciousness and machinery, sharing glimpses of basic robotics with Michael in ways that masked deeper pursuits became William's method of maintaining a facade of normal father-son interaction while satisfying his need to discuss his work with someone, even if that someone couldn't fully grasp the implications of what was being described. Michael, eager for any positive attention from his distant father, absorbed these lessons enthusiastically, learning to identify servotypes, understanding basic circuit diagrams, and developing rudimentary maintenance skills that William claimed would be useful should Michael ever want to join the family business officially. These teaching moments occurred sporadically in the workshop, William occasionally inviting Michael down to assist with simple tasks like organizing tools or testing animatronic limbs in isolation, supervised experiences that exposed the teenager to the technical side of the pizzeria without revealing the darker experiments William conducted alone. This selective sharing fostered a household curiosity about the animatronics' inner workings that affected all three children differently. Michael developed clinical interest, focused on mechanics. Elizabeth maintained emotional attachment to the characters themselves, and the youngest son only deepened his fear, as partial understanding of how the machines functioned made them seem more threatening rather than less, their mechanical nature rendering them inhuman and unpredictable in his imagination. Elizabeth's begging for Circus Baby, a character from a sister location's designs that William had mentioned perhaps more often than he should have given that the project remained purely theoretical, highlighted how William's creations extended beyond the main Freddy Fazbear's stage and influenced family dynamics in increasingly unhealthy ways. He had described Circus Baby as his masterpiece, an animatronic that would surpass Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy in sophistication and interactivity, designed to perform specifically for children during birthday parties, with personalized attention and advanced features that would revolutionize the entertainment robotics industry. Elizabeth absorbed these descriptions with uncritical wonder. Imagining Circus Baby as a friend rather than a machine, building emotional investment in a character that existed only in her father's sketches and verbal descriptions, creating anticipation for something that might never materialize into physical form, depending on whether William could secure funding and technical solutions for the ambitious features he envisioned. Her dreams of meeting Circus Baby became a frequent topic at family dinners, where she would ask when the new location would open and whether she could be present for Circus Baby's first activation, questions that William answered with vague promises that pushed fulfillment perpetually into the future. Dates that shifted whenever Elizabeth pressed for specifics, maintaining her hope through indefinite delay that prevented disappointment, while allowing William to continue discussing his designs without commitment to actually building them. The youngest boy's fears, amplified by family visits and glimpses of his father's work, manifested in nightmares of shadowy figures that blended animatronic features with monstrous proportions, a direct result of his young mind processing exposure to the mechanical performers in ways his limited understanding of robotics couldn't rationalize. He would wake screaming from dreams where Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy chased him through dark hallways, their movements jerky and aggressive, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent that transformed them from entertainers into predators. Imagery that his subconscious constructed from fragments of reality, actual animatronics, seen during restaurant visits, and childhood fears about things hiding in darkness or lurking just out of sight. William's response to these episodes ranged from irritation to concern depending on how frequently they disrupted household sleep, sometimes attempting comfort through logical explanations about how the animatronics were merely machines incapable of harm, other times simply instructing Michael to handle the situation while William returned to his workshop or bedroom, prioritizing his work over extended parenting that might have addressed his youngest son's deeper anxieties through patience and gradual desensitization. As remnant research intensified in William's private experiments, it eroded family normalcy further, pulling him into isolation that manifested as emotional distance during family interactions and physical absence during meals and events that previous versions of himself would have attended despite work pressures. The family adapted around this increasing unavailability, developing routines that assumed William's participation as optional rather than expected, children checking first whether he would be present for dinner before setting the table, Elizabeth learning not to expect engagement with her drawings of animatronics despite initial attempts to share them, and Michael gradually taking over household tasks that previously William might have handled, like basic repairs or decisions about groceries and scheduling. This gradual withdrawal, though never acknowledged explicitly within the family, planted seeds of dysfunction that would bear fruit in later tragedies, creating children who either craved their father's attention desperately, like Elizabeth, or who developed resentment and acted out in ways designed to provoke response, like Michael's bullying of his younger brother, behaviors that grew more extreme as William's presence in their daily lives diminished. Even when he occupied the same physical space, his mind clearly elsewhere amid household activities. Occasional trips to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza wove the Afton children into the venue's fabric more deeply. Their repeated exposure to the space during both public operating hours and after-hours visits when William needed to conduct maintenance, creating familiarity that existed in tension with the youngest son's fear and Elizabeth's idealization of the animatronics. During these visits, they wandered through dining areas that smelled of pizza dough and industrial cleaning chemicals, heard the constant electronic melodies from arcade machines, mixing with programmed songs from the stage, and observed other families enjoying experiences that contrasted with their own complicated relationship to the venue, where the line between entertainment destination and father's workplace blurred into something neither entirely recreational nor completely professional. Michael roamed the halls freely during these visits, sometimes engaging in sibling pranks under his father's distracted supervision, using his familiarity with back areas and staff routines to stage scenarios that frightened his younger brother, like hiding in storage closets before jumping out with animatronic masks or leading his brother close to the stage during performances where the towering figures could loom over him, cruel entertainment that Michael justified as toughening up his sensitive sibling, while actually serving to process his own resentment about the attention their father devoted to mechanical creations rather than to his human children. Elizabeth pressed her face to stage barriers during shows, admiring the performers' poses with unconcealed delight, her enthusiasm fueled by William's promises of behind-the-scenes access that deepened her bond with the creations, but also positioned her in dangerous proximity to machines that, despite their entertaining purposes, could cause harm through mechanical malfunction or through deliberate misuse by someone who understood their operation well enough to subvert their safety features. She would wave at the animatronics during performances, as though they could see and recognize her, singing along to their songs with childish unself-consciousness, creating scenes that would have been sweet in isolation, but which carried darker undertones, given her father's increasing obsession with the technology and the experiments he was conducting that pushed beyond entertainment into ISS, territories where animatronics might serve purposes far removed from making children laugh and applaud. Her requests to stay after closing, to watch her father work on the machines, grew more insistent over time, requests that William sometimes granted in controlled circumstances, where Elizabeth could observe basic maintenance from safe distance, while he performed adjustments that appeared routine, even as his thoughts dwelled on theories and experiments he would never conduct in front of witnesses, maintaining the illusion of normal technical work while concealing the true directions his research had taken. The youngest son clung to edges during family visits, wide-eyed at Foxy's tales from Pirate Cove but refusing to approach closer than absolutely necessary, experiences that heightened his anxieties yet tied the family closer to William's world in ways that made escape from the animatronics' presence impossible, even within the supposed safety of home. His fear manifested physically through tensed posture and shallow breathing whenever animatronics activated nearby. Involuntary responses that Michael sometimes mocked, and which frustrated William when he noticed them, creating cycles where family visits that were intended to be enjoyable outings instead became endurance tests for the youngest child, who associated the pizzeria with dread rather than fun. His perspective completely inverted from the intended customer experience that Henry Emily had carefully engineered through every design choice and operational procedure. These negative associations, combined with nightmares and daytime anxieties that colored his perception of even harmless mechanical toys at home, set stage for tragedies that would later unfold, where the youngest son's fears would prove prophetic in ways the family couldn't imagine during these relatively innocent early years, when William's darkness remained mostly contained within private thoughts and secretive experiments rather than manifesting in actions that would shatter multiple families and transform Freddy Fazbear's Pizza from entertainment venue into crime scene. These visits, meant to bridge work and home, instead amplified underlying tensions as the animatronics' programmed cheer contrasted with emerging shadows in William's pursuits, creating dissonance that the children felt even if they couldn't articulate what seemed wrong about their father's relationship with his creations. The pizzeria represented different things to each family member for William: a laboratory and proving ground for theories about remnant and consciousness. For Michael, a familiar space where he possessed insider knowledge that elevated his status among peers. For Elizabeth, a magical realm where beloved characters lived and performed. And for the youngest son, a nightmare realm where fear took physical form in towering mechanical bodies. A spectrum of experiences that illustrated how thoroughly William's work had penetrated family identity while simultaneously driving wedges between members who could no longer connect around simple shared experiences untainted by the complicated emotions surrounding Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and everything it represented in their individual psychologies. Charlotte Emily, daughter of co-founder Henry Emily, spent considerable time at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza during its operational years, her presence tied naturally to the venue through her father's role as technical designer and co-owner, giving her access to spaces and experiences that regular patrons never encountered. As depicted in minigames that reveal fragments of her story, Charlotte existed amid the chatter of families and the constant hum of arcade machines, her small figure navigating the dining area with confidence born from familiarity, recognizing staff members by name, and understanding the rhythms of business in ways that children from ordinary customer families couldn't, having observed countless shifts from opening preparations through closing procedures. Her connection to the space ran deeper than mere frequent visiting, implied by visual elements, like the green wristband that linked her to security features Henry had implemented, suggesting she participated in testing protocols or served as example case for systems designed to protect children from wandering into dangerous areas or leaving the premises unsupervised during parties, when adult attention might lapse during busy periods. This familiarity stemmed from her father's dedication, where his protective designs like the puppet's surveillance programming extended into ensuring Charlotte's safety specifically, while also serving all children who visited the establishment. The puppet, housed in its striped gift box near the prize counter, represented Henry's most personal creation, engineering that blended his professional expertise with paternal instincts to create a system that could monitor his daughter, even when his attention was divided among business operations, technical maintenance, and partnership management alongside William Afton. Charlotte seemingly understood the puppet's purpose on some level, treating it not with the mixture of fascination and fear that other children exhibited, but rather with casual acceptance of its presence as part of the pizzeria's environment, a guardian figure that watched from its box and emerged occasionally when younger visitors strayed too far from their parties. Its music box melody, serving as both announcement of its patrol and gentle reminder that certain areas remained off-limits to wandering children who might otherwise discover hazards in storage rooms or maintenance areas. Her presence at the restaurant humanized the mechanical world in ways that affected operations subtly, as staff members maintained extra awareness of Henry's daughter, even amid crowded party environments, ensuring she remained safe and supervised without needing to hover obtrusively, creating informal protective networks that existed alongside the formal security measures Henry had engineered into the venue's systems. She appeared in party settings with other children, participating in celebrations as both insider with special access and ordinary kid enjoying pizza and games, dual status that seemed not to trouble her despite potential social complications it might have created, her apparent confidence and friendliness allowing her to navigate between different groups without becoming isolated by her connection to the establishment's ownership. These experiences reinforced the venue's aim to blend technology with warmth, creating spaces where human relationships flourished alongside mechanical entertainment, where Charlotte could enjoy birthday cake, while also understanding on some level that the animatronics delivering songs were her father's creations rather than magical beings, knowledge that didn't diminish her enjoyment, but rather enriched it through appreciation of the engineering and artistry involved in creating illusions that captivated audiences night after night. Over time, these elements built quiet bonds between Charlotte and the pizzeria's various components, drawing her deeper into routines that defined the space, while also positioning her as symbol of innocence that the venue was designed to protect and nurture. A representative figure for all children who should find only joy and safety within walls that her father had helped design with exactly such purposes in mind. The trust implicit in Henry allowing Charlotte such access to the pizzeria spoke to his confidence in the safety measures he had implemented and his belief that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza represented genuinely safe environment where children could explore and play without encountering dangers that existed in less carefully designed public spaces. This trust, unfortunately, would prove misplaced not because Henry's engineering failed, but because human evil could subvert even the best designed systems, finding gaps in coverage that resulted from practical limitations rather than negligence, moments when security features couldn't operate because their fundamental assumptions about human behavior and adult supervision didn't account for deliberate malice, targeting vulnerable children during circumstances that should have been routine and safe. One rainy evening shifted everything, an event that occurred outside the pizzeria's walls, but which nonetheless became inextricably linked to its history and to the horrors that would follow. Rain fell steadily over Freddy Fazbear's Pizza that evening, casting muted glow on the parking lot, where families hurried to their cars after day of celebrations, the downpour heavy enough to reduce visibility and encourage quick exits, rather than lingering goodbyes that might occur during clearer weather. Charlotte Emily, somehow locked out during the rush of departures following what appears to have been a birthday gathering, stood alone in the alley beside the building, her small figure silhouetted against the brick wall, as she waited for someone to notice her absence and return to retrieve her. An oversight that should have been impossible given the puppet's programming, but which occurred nonetheless, suggesting either system failure or circumstances that placed Charlotte outside the puppet's monitoring range during the critical moments when she needed its intervention most urgently. William Afton, familiar to Charlotte through his role at the pizzeria and his partnership with her father, pulled up in his purple car, the vehicle's distinctive color occasionally noted in witness accounts and minigame depictions, its engine's low rumble blending with the downpour's steady percussion against pavement. He stopped the vehicle before Charlotte, positioning it to block view from the street or parking lot, his presence shifting the ordinary scene of adult assisting lost child into something far more sinister. Though Charlotte had no reason to fear someone she knew from countless interactions at the pizzeria, where William had always appeared professional and appropriate in his dealings with young customers. This approach exploited the trust built from his position and familiarity, leading Charlotte to lower her guard in the isolated moment, a direct cause of vulnerability that allowed what followed to unfold without resistance or flight response that might have occurred, had Stranger approached instead of someone she recognized and associated with safety through connection to both the pizzeria and her father's business. Partnership, once near Charlotte in the rain-soaked alley, where puddles reflected distant streetlights in wavering patterns and sound of downpour masked potential cries for help. William Afton committed murder in the shadows, the act unfolding away from prying eyes as he ended Charlotte's life through means that remain ambiguous in primary sources, leaving her small body on the wet ground where rain continued to fall and dilute evidence, washing away traces that might otherwise have immediately identified her killer. The brutality of the act contrasted sharply with the venue's cheerful facade visible through windows where lights still burned inside the pizzeria, families perhaps still lingering to finish meals or allow children final arcade games, unaware that horror was occurring just outside, in spaces that should have been safe by proximity to well-lit, populated building. This choice of location stemmed from opportunity that arose from circumstances, the locked door that prevented Charlotte from re-entering, the weather that kept potential witnesses hurrying to vehicles rather than noticing alley activity, Charlotte's isolation that removed protective elements that might have intervened, creating convergence of factors that William recognized and exploited, marking his first deliberate step into darkness, driven by motivations that mixed experimentation with remnant theories and deeper psychological disturbances that had been building throughout his obsessive research into consciousness and mechanical vessels. In the aftermath, as rain continued falling and William departed in his purple car, the puppet animatronic stirred from its prize counter station inside the pizzeria, its programming detecting Charlotte's green wristband signal from outside the building and triggering protocols Henry had designed for exactly such situations where children wandered beyond safe boundaries. The puppet, compelled by its code to protect the child wearing the monitored wristband, crawled out into the rain in a futile attempt to reach Charlotte and fulfill its protective purpose, dragging itself across wet pavement as its internal systems struggled against moisture that interfered with circuitry and mechanical function, its striped limbs soaked and strings trailing behind like abandoned marionette parts. The puppet reached Charlotte's side in the alley, positioning itself over her still form as though physical presence could somehow undo what had occurred, the machine's limited intelligence attempting to execute programmed care routines even as rain shorted circuits and caused cascading system failures. This response highlighted the puppet's security design by Henry Emily, his intention that it safeguard children manifesting in this desperate crawl toward Charlotte. Even as environmental conditions destroyed the animatronic's functionality, arriving too late to prevent tragedy, but still driven to attempt protection through programming that represented Henry's love for his daughter, encoded in electronic systems and mechanical behaviors. The scene in that alley, with the puppet's form draped over Charlotte's body as rain hammered both machine and child, became a moment of transformation, where the rules of possession that would govern subsequent events first manifested through mechanisms not fully understood, even by William Afton, despite his remnant research. Charlotte's consciousness, her essence, or soul in terms that blend spiritual concepts with FNAF lore's mechanical mysticism, didn't simply dissipate but rather lingered in the liminal space between life and death, drawn toward the puppet that had come searching for her, binding to its frame through processes involving remnant, the metallic compound infused with life force that Henry had unknowingly incorporated into his designs through material choices and construction techniques. This possession awakened the puppet in ways transcending its original programming, its mechanical eyes flickering with new awareness that shifted it from automated security system to something approaching consciousness, an entity that retained Charlotte's protective instincts and memories while inhabiting mechanical form, creating the first instance of true possession, where human soul and animatronic merged into hybrid existence, that would persist beyond what should have been the machine's operational lifespan. The event marked William Afton's crossing of final moral boundaries that had restrained his experiments to theoretical realms and minor infractions, demonstrating his willingness to harm children in pursuit of remnant research and immortality obsessions that had consumed his thoughts for months or years leading to this moment. Charlotte's death also established patterns Afton would repeat in subsequent crimes, showing his methods of exploitation through trust and opportunity, his preference for isolation that prevented witnesses, and his apparent lack of remorse that allowed him to continue operations at the pizzeria afterward as though nothing significant had occurred, maintaining professional facade while processing whatever satisfaction or knowledge he had gained from his first kill. The tragedy's occurrence outside the pizzeria itself, in adjacent alley rather than within the building's interior, perhaps allowed William to rationalize his continued presence at the venue without feeling he was desecrating the actual business space, a mental compartmentalization that separated his crimes from his legitimate role, while nonetheless thoroughly contaminating the entire enterprise through association and through the possessed animatronic that now existed within the prize. Counter's gift box, watching with Charlotte's awareness behind mechanical eyes. Henry Emily's reaction to Charlotte's death, though not explicitly depicted in games, can be inferred to have devastated him completely, shattering the optimistic inventor whose designs sought to create joy and safety, confronting him with ultimate failure of his protective systems and loss of his daughter in circumstance that should have been prevented by the very technology he had created to keep her safe. The puppet's possession by Charlotte's spirit meant that Henry, in his grief, continued interacting with creation that now housed his daughter's consciousness, unknowing partnership between father and possessed machine that would span years until Henry finally learned the truth about what existed within the puppet's frame, knowledge that would inform his eventual decisions to end the cycle through destruction of all remaining animatronics, releasing trapped souls, including his own daughter's spirit that had lingered far too long in mechanical prison, awaiting peace that could only come through fire that severed binding between consciousness and metal, finally allowing Charlotte's essence to move beyond the pizzeria, where she had spent so much of her abbreviated life, amid arcade sounds and pizza smells, and the gentle hum of her father's creations, performing their endless routines for audiences who never suspected the tragedies being encoded into Freddy Fazbear's history with each passing day. From this first possession emerged rules that would govern subsequent hauntings, where trauma and proximity combined to anchor souls to animatronic forms through Remnant's mysterious properties, creating conditions that William Afton would deliberately reproduce in his attack on 5 more children. The missing children incident proper that would follow Charlotte's murder as prelude, expanding single tragedy into wholesale slaughter that transformed Freddy Fazbear's Pizza from place where 1 death occurred outside its walls into location where 5 murders happened within its hidden spaces, filling core animatronic band with vengeful spirits, whose pursuit of their killer would drive decades of horror as mechanical bodies stalked through darkness toward man responsible for binding their souls to metal prisons, seeking justice denied them in life through spectral vengeance, executed with mechanical precision, turning William Afton's creations against him in ironic cycle, where his own technical genius enabled his eventual torment at hands of those he had wronged most grievously, children who should have found only joy in spaces he helped design, but who instead found only death and eternal haunting within machines that sang cheerful songs while hiding impossible darkness beneath their colorful exteriors and friendly programming.